I'd have to almost write something on the card. Yeah.
Can you see the red nucleus at all?
Yeah, we actually had one over here. So the red nucleus is always going to be given away by the substantia nigra. If you look at the substantia nigra here, there's going to be a little area of gray matter kind of cupped. They're nice and circular. The red nuclei are very circular, and they're cupped by the substantia nigra. Almost hardly in any cross-section, whether it's a coronal cross-section, they're going to be cupped above. In a transverse section, they're going to be cupped behind the substantia nigra. So the substantia nigra cups the red nucleus in any kind of section. Yeah. We did Broca's. The orbital gyri are the ones that are on the bottom. Right here. So these are the orbital gyri here, because again the orbit is right below. Is where the eye would be connected. The olfactory tracts. There's one right there. There's an olfactory tract on this brain right here. Where you know how it gets to become a big bulge on the end there? That's the olfactory bulb. That's on there? No, it's the tract. Oh yeah, that's both on there. So the bump on the end is the olfactory bulb, and then the tract is this extension of it coming this way. Now you have, notice how you have right on the outside of that, right on the inside of that, you have a really straight gyrus. That's this one here, gyrus rectus. Is that on there? I put that. Oh yeah, right above it. Yeah, that's gyrus rectus. Yeah. The straight one's right in the midline. Right there, gyrus rectus. The primaries, we did those. We did supramarginal, angular, Wernicke. Primary auditory cortex is really on the top of the superior temporal gyrus. So if you take the superior temporal gyrus and you kind of pull it down right there, the top, right, so right here, the top of the superior temporal gyrus, that's the primary auditory cortex. So that's where the information from your ears, your cochlear nuclei, is going first. Kind of the conscious perception of sound. Right there. Parahippocampal gyrus is this. If I separate these here. Oop. Pulling away these blood vessels. Sorry, guy. He's gonna have a stroke. You're gonna do done, buddy. There you go. There you go. So see this big gyrus right here? On the inside of that one, that's where we'd find that hippocampus that I had there. If we look deep, we follow that all the way into the lateral ventricle. Because remember, the lateral ventricle coils all the way around. That hippocampus is deep on the inside of that. So this is the gray matter which surrounds the hippocampus. So this is the parahippocampal gyrus. And then did I put uncus next? I did. It's almost like I planned that. See this little bump right here on the inside of it? See that bump right there? So how that parahippocampal gyrus surrounds the brainstem, and then there's this bump on the inside. That bump is the uncus. Technically, bump is not uncus. Uncus is hook. An uncus is a hook in Latin. So you see how it kind of hooks around the brainstem. That bump right there. That's the uncus. Calcarine sulcus is right there. Kind of pull it apart. That's this sulcus right here in the middle of the occipital lobe. You can only see it from the middle sagittal view. The primary visual cortex is above and below that. So this gray matter right above and right below the calcarine sulcus is primary visual cortex. Right above and below the calcarine sulcus. Corpus callosum. If I give you that one, I hope you all get it right.
Can you give us it in that view?
Yeah, right.
That'd be nice.
This one's not bad either, right? Or that one? Or that one?
I mean,
or that one? Or that one? It's not a corpus
I
callosum.
just really like this view. I think it's very beautiful. It speaks to me. It
speaks.
Like it speaks to you.
This is your muse of the corpus callosum.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. I like that. All right. Cingulate gyrus is this one right above the corpus callosum. Cingulate gyrus. Interventricular foramen is it's actually would be right there. So it's going from the lateral ventricles down into the third. Oh, here, there's one right there. Look at that. See where the fornix is still attached right there? So this fornix is still attached right there. So that's the interventricular foramen right there.
That makes sense.
So
For real.
yeah.
Foramen, okay, which
Yeah.
is
So that's
just
the
a hole.
fornix too right there.
Yeah, and that's the fornix right there. So the fornix is coming from the hypothalamus. It's going up and then over the top of the thalamus.
There's like so many views for the fornix, I feel. So
It's like the things that are sliced.
Cerebral aqueduct is the next one on your list right there. So you could see that. I guess you could see it here, like in this view, right? It's it's in the middle of the midbrain. Separates the front of the midbrain from the tectum. Oh, there's the. You guys see the colliculi there? That's a nice little. See the colliculi, right there. 2 bumps. Yeah, like that.
What's underneath it that you just said?
spoke to him.
Cerebral aqueduct. Now I'm starting to think she's making fun of me.
I'm not. I'm just telling
just some
people
good
because if you like it, then you might as well know it because that's probably something they'll speak to the day of.
Where else? If we had a nice. Sometimes if you take a sagittal, transverse view, you can see this. This is actually a weird, funny kind of oblique cut of the cerebral aqueduct, right, coming from the midbrain towards us this way. But if you get a view through here, you can sometimes see a transverse view through the cerebral aqueduct too. That's a nice
Does
deep.
it look different in a transverse view?
It's just, it's going to be right in between the substantia nigra. Yeah. Optic tracts are the names of the optic nerves after they cross. So you see here, this technically here, but from the chiasm this way, it's an optic nerve because a nerve exits the dura. But if it stays in the dura, then from the chiasm back, this is an optic tract. So optic nerve, chiasm, tract. So tract is from the chiasm backwards.
Do I? Like more into the yes. Back.
Thalamus, you guys can see here, this is thalamus. This has
This is
a,
like really small. I feel like.
this, well, but it goes, you also got to think it goes that way. So this whole, the thalamus is not only, you can see it here, but it's also all of, this is the rest of his fornix there. It's all of this. This is all the thalamus. This whole mass is the thalamus.
Where's the olive on there then? Would that be down towards the
olive?
brainstem?
Yeah, right. That bump right there.
That was right next
Pyramid, olive. Pyramid, olive.
It's a lot bigger in that thing than you should. It's magnified.
Yeah. Hypothalamus. Here in this view, it's simply so that's thalamus, and this area here is the hypothalamus. This is the hypothalamus right here, right there. We're a little too far back because if this is thalamus here, then this is the midbrain, so we've got to be further forward, right, to get to the hypothalamus. It's too far back. Let's see if we can go forward a little bit. This is this gray matter right in here. Since we're now in front of the midbrain, this is the hypothalamus right in here. That's a tough view of the hypothalamus.
That's
Do you like that view, April?
I do not. It does not speak to me at all. Should not use it.
not to speak in Spanish.
It's speaking Spanish.
There's a little bit of his pineal gland that's kind of smooshed up right there. Obviously, his pineal in here. Yeah. I'm gonna just butcher it. There's it. Bang, there. You see his pineal in there? See it right there? Doo-doo. So the pineal gland is going to be right behind the top of the midbrain. So there's midbrain. Here's the thalamus. Right behind the thalamus, in between the thalamus and the midbrain, that's going to be the pineal gland. That's it right there. Yeah, that little.
Can you show it in here again? Sorry.
In there?
Yeah.
It's way in there. I wouldn't show you this view. Because see it right, actually, there. It's right.
Oh, I
It's
do see
right,
it.
right
It's a
there.
little, like the little
Yeah.
guy.
The little guy, about the size of a pea, maybe. In early vertebrates didn't have this big pesky cerebrum to worry about. All right, so this structure had not really evolved yet, and so actually, if you don't have that, you can imagine that if you don't have this cerebrum in the way, then the back of the brainstem here is pressed right up against the back of the skull. And actually, the pineal gland in early vertebrates, so early hagfish, lamprey, or even early amphibians, could sense light. And that actually tells them when the days are longer, right? It's summertime, breeding season. When the days are shorter, it's fall, winter, time to go into hibernation. So they could actually use the pineal gland to regulate their cycles. Do I lose you guys? I just want to make sure I have time. So I want to get through these. This has a really nice interthalamic adhesion. You guys see that? See that area right there, where the thalamus has this little kind of bundle of fibers right in the middle of the thalamus, right there. So that would have connected right there. So that's where one thalamus connects to the other thalamus.
What is that called?
Interthalamic adhesion. Midbrain, right there to there. This pons, medulla, cerebellum. Those are fun ones, right? Fourth ventricle. And cervical enlargement is just from about C5 to T1, where the brachial plexus emerges from the cord. Lumbosacral enlargement is from about L2 to about S4, where the lumbosacral plexus emerges from the cord. Conus medullaris, dorsal rootlets we saw, they make up a dorsal root, blah, blah, blah. Cauda, pyramid, olive, obex. Central canal is really, really hard to label. It is if you could really theoretically get your probe, it's too small. It's the tiny little space inside the spinal cord, really narrow. Central canal, it's the remnants of, if you follow the fourth ventricle down in through the obex, you could get down into the central canal, into the cord itself. I don't know if I just am actually in it or if I just simply just stabbed it there. Basilar sulcus is the groove in the middle of the pons where the basilar artery runs. So you can see here the pons has this depression right in the middle of it. And look what runs in the basilar sulcus. There's the basilar artery. Ta-da! Right?
So
And then
the
these are the
vertebral.
Yeah, these are the
vertebral.
vertebral.
Okay.
There's one vertebral right there, and there's the other vertebral on the other side. Yep, those are the two vertebral arteries. There's the cut-off stump of the internal carotid right there, and right there. So vertebral, basilar, and then there's the stumps of the internal carotids right there, and right there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.
You got superior cerebellar peduncle. That's best to see in those brainstem views that I did there. Really, it's the continuation of these fibers. It'd be if I cut this right through here. If I cut this piece coming down from the midbrain into the cerebellum. So if I would cut this right through this white matter, right in there, that's the superior cerebellar peduncle. If I would cut through it on the outside, here where it's connected to the pons, that's the middle cerebellar peduncle. And if I'd cut through this white matter down here where it's right in this bottom part where it's connected to the medulla, that's the inferior cerebellar peduncle. Peduncles, crus cerebri. That's the front of the midbrain. So you see how there's the substantia nigra right here? This white matter right in here. This white matter right in here. If you cut it in cross section, it's going to be the anterior kind of part of the midbrain. So if you cut the midbrain like this, it's going to be the front V of the midbrain. And this is where the fibers are going from the midbrain up through the internal capsule, up into the cerebrum. So that's why they are the feet of the cerebrum, the cerebral peduncles. A pedestrian, someone who walks around on their feet, right? So the cerebral peduncles are the feet of the cerebrum. They're right in here. You got the colliculi, superior and inferior colliculus. Superior colliculus is the top bump. Inferior colliculus is the bottom bump. Can you guys all see those? 1, 2, 1, 2. really easy to see in those midbrains where they're dissected up there at the front. You see, go look at those.
So is there like two sets of the superior?
Yep, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom. They're each paired.
Anything I know is not.
Sure. So this is just one of them. Realize that there's another one on the other side, right? So there's a see the big bump, superior colliculus, inferior colliculus. They're at the back of the midbrain. Back of the midbrain. You gotta smile. What sign? Smile. There you go. Good job. It's easier to study if you smile, I promise.
Probably keep everything going.
Caudate nucleus, putamen, globus pallidus. You know, caudate nucleus you can see in the lateral walls of the lateral ventricles. Caudate nucleus, caudate nucleus. There's just a tiny little bit by the gray matter right there. Caudate nucleus, caudate nucleus. Oh, just a little bit up there. Caudate nucleus. Let's see in the back here. There. This is a big section right there on this side, but not much on that side.
That's caudate.
Yeah, it's the head of the caudate. We're way at.
Is that the thing that curls around?
Yeah, we're way at the front. We're way at the front here.
It looks like the horn, ram's horn.
Yeah, it takes the same shape. Yeah, the caudate nucleus, the caudate nucleus, the fornix, the lateral ventricles, they all kind of have that same kind of curved shape. The fornix is on the inside of the ventricle. The caudate nucleus is on the lateral outside of the ventricle. So it's always tucked in one.
Fornix down here.
Yeah, the bottom of that that's the beginning of the fornix. Down there, the bottom. This is, see how, remember in the front I told you it'd be a lot further down from the corpus callosum down to the fornix? This is the septum pellucidum. Cardiac, we did those. Internal capsule are all these white matter fibers that are going down lateral to the thalamus. So this right in here, this is the internal capsule. This right in here, it's going to separate the thalamus from the basal ganglia. So the internal capsule is always going to separate thalamus from basal ganglia.
Which is usually the putamen right on the other side of that.
Yeah, well, this is putamen and a little bit of the globus pallidus. Yeah, but the putamen is the biggest, usually the biggest. That's putamen right there too. Now at the front end, though, when you get really far forward, you start to lose the thalamus. So this is a view. You notice that if you look in there, you're going to get caudate nucleus and putamen, but you're not going to have any more of the thalamus in the midline because this is way forward. This is way near the front section here. Internal capsule.
So you said there's not really a thalamus there.
There's no thalamus. You're too far. This view is too far forward to be the thalamus. You're getting back just a little bit. There's a little putamen and globus pallidus, but you need to get a little bit further backwards to get to the thalamus.
That right there is the thalamus.
That's the thalamus.
Okay.
Yeah. Dorsal column. Don't worry. But those are just the white matter of the spinal cord. Right. Dorsal column are the tracts, fasciculus, gracilis, and cuneatus. Anterior column's the white matter around the front of the cord. The lateral column's the white matter on the side of the cord. Those are just the columns. Internal carotid artery. We showed those on that one.
Will we be able to see that? The lateral side.
Nah. Unless for some reason I have a model for columns. The columns are just the white matter of the cord.
Right, that didn't look, I mean, that all looked like big.
A mass.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't worry about those. Anterior spinal artery is the artery that's running in that anterior groove. And remember how I showed you there were 2 grooves on the back? There are 2 posterior spinal arteries that run on the spinal cord. So when you look at the spinal cord that's up there, in the singular groove in the middle is the anterior spinal artery.
Okay.
And on the 2 paired lateral grooves on the back, there are 2 paired posterior spinal arteries.
In each side of it.
Yeah. And then best to see probably those nerves on those brainstem sections up there. We went through most of those nerves on that brainstem
Can you
section.
go over the basal ganglia again on there? Yeah, basal nerve.
Here's the thalamus separated by the internal capsule. And so outside of that are most of them, which is you got the putamen. So that's putamen. And this is putamen. And you see this little light line right there and that line right there? this gray matter on the inside, that's which it's lighter, but it's not white like this. This is the globus pallidus, and there's a little bit of globus pallidus in there. It's outside this little triangle right there. This little triangle right here. This one, can you guys see? It's cut a little bit off kilter.
Okay.
But can you see how there's a second line right about there?
Yeah.
Right there, and then there's another little wedge just in. There's actually an internal and external sections of the globus pallidus. There's globus pallidus externus and globus pallidus internus. Wouldn't it be fun if you could learn all those too?
I wish I could.
They're both here though.
It's such a shame there's not enough time.
Could learn everything about this.
Oh man. I don't know how much my brain hurts right now. What does my brain look like when it hurts?
Like this. Like this. And it falls apart.
Pretty accurate.
Just pieces.
Like,
I got some buckets up there that literally,
From
when
students'
when
brains.
I've done those hippocampal dissections where I've cut sections out at a time, it's literally just brain parts. That's what your brain is like. All right, we're pretty close.